Hello and welcome to another edition of Choose to Challenge. I'm LaWanna Bradford here on E360 TV, and I'm excited because one of the things about Choose to Challenge is we go deep, we go raw. We're here to challenge the status quo, shift the narratives, help to expand and enlighten, and give you greater awareness of things that may be happening to you and or individuals around you. This is about breaking free of barriers, those systems, those mental blocks, conditions that may be preventing us from expanding to the best and highest version of ourselves. Today, I'm excited because I have a very special guest who will be joining us. She is a certified quantum coach, a neuro-linguistic practitioner, and she's a former corporate executive who has come to the table based upon her lived experience, the meltdown situation, if you will, by living a life behind the mask and realizing that there's freedom expressed when we are able to show up in our truth, in our authenticity, where we aren't silenced, even silenced by deep-seated programming that ends up stifling us from speaking our truth and being authentic. And this is none other than Sonya Figueiredo, and she will be with us in just one moment for another edition of Choose to Challenge. Hello, Sonya.
Hello, LaWanna. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And you are hailing from Australia, right?
Yes, I am. I'm coming from Canberra, Australia, which is our nation's capital, and it's about 2.5 hours from Sydney, which most people think is the capital of Australia.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we were able to connect despite the time zone difference, but we made it happen. And this show, we're going to be talking about breaking the mask, women defining power and presence. And I want to start off with, we were talking prior to the show, and you gave some very thought-provoking quotes. And I want to start off with this, and then let's talk a little bit about this because you were successful in corporate and life on the surface appeared to be perfect. But you said, I struggle with being perfect. It was my badge of honor. However, inside, I was quietly falling to pieces and always on guard. If you wouldn't mind, can you give us a little bit of your origin story and how did you land up with that realization?
All right, thank you. I will move through this quite quickly because it actually starts from my birth. I was born premature. I was back in the 60s where care was a little bit different than what it is today. And I came into the world fighting, which we all do, of course. But for me, I was in a sterile environment with lights pinging and, being left alone for pretty much 6 months of my initial being here on this earth. What that meant was that I already was wired with the fight flight. I was also wired to be in a condition called abandonment. And I was left in isolation, even though my mother was there, and she was also disconnected from me. So I began already in a high state of cortisol from the time I was born. Then as I got older, the relationship with my mother was strained quite a lot because we didn't get the attachment that you would normally get from mother and daughter. And the parenting that she gave my brother was significantly different. So I can recall times where, I would be hiding under a table. I would be climbing up a gym set just to try and get away from anything that was coming my way because I was a little bit sassy. And that all added to how I saw myself, because what happened was I became the people pleaser. I became the girl who did not want to say anything wrong. So I was constantly on guard. I would never put, a finger out of place, or I would never talk back. And the whole time that was really exhausting, because internally all I wanted to do was be a little bit sassy and be a little bit "no, you're wrong." And I never did that because I was flying under the radar all the time. Then we move on to university, and a period of my life where my friends were going to university or college, and I couldn't do that because my mother had leukemia. And because I was the good girl, all I wanted to do was do what was I thought was right, and that was to make sure that I helped my family. So I went out and got a job, and I watched all my friends from a sideline. Then I met my husband. Now he's an amazing man, but I have what they call fearful abandonment, which is an attachment. And what that means is I'm avoiding, I'm wanting to pull back, and I'm stoic. I want to do everything myself, regardless of what that means for me. And then, of course, I'm the fearful person, and I need answers straight away. If you're pulling away from me, I need to fix it. So I was constantly in that burnout phase. My husband came along, and he is what you call dismissive avoidant, because we actually attract the different type of attachment. And that's a beautiful dance in itself, but it's also a very tiring one. But he gave me the stability I was looking for because my home life was not stable. My relationships with my caregivers were strained. My father, they divorced when I was 13, but he was always away because he was always trying to earn money to bring to the family. And my mother was always spending it. So there was always this constant circle of um, income coming in, income going out. And it wasn't a great place to grow up because there was always tension. So I was always doing the best to shrink into the background, or I was doing my best to make sure that I tried to make my mum happy. I tried to make my dad happy. So that cycle kept going. And into my relationship with my husband, that's what happened too, because I needed to be the good girl. I needed to be the best wife ever. And of course, when we had disagreements, what would happen? I would overwork. I would overcompensate, because if I was just good enough, if I just did what I thought he would make him happy, everything would be okay. But of course, it wasn't. It was only okay for a while because it gets tiring. You cannot, or I couldn't, keep doing that because it just was exhausting, and it wasn't true to me, because naturally I'm the person who likes to do everything by myself. If I can't do it by myself, I'll find a way to do it by myself. So there was always that constant tug of war. And unfortunately, too, if I'm honest, the cycle from my parents and the spending to self soothe when I felt bad, and then the trying to save for the mortgage and that constant tension. And we know in relationships, that is actually one of the number one reasons why people actually do divorce and people do separate. And it all came down to me being fearful. It came down to me being fearful that I wouldn't be loved, that my relationship would dissolve. And I was never in a position where I could actually sit at a table with my partner and be comfortable enough to tell him what was going on. Because internally, my whole body was screaming every time I needed to have a conversation with him that was going to make me be seen. because he didn't really know me. My kids didn't really know me. And that happened at work too. I was brilliant. I did run multi-million dollar projects, and I led sizable teams, quite complex teams. And I was the leader that they needed, but I wasn't the leader that I needed for me. I would, uh, I recall, working sometimes up until 10, 11 o'clock at night, making sure everything was done. I would overcompensate by doing more to be seen because worked in an environment where it was predominantly men and predominantly alpha. So what I thought I needed to do was work harder, be more, do more. And, what would happen sometimes when I was in the boardroom, I would speak up, I would give my piece, but the whole time I just wanted to run because it didn't feel normal to me because the eyes were on me and I had to make a decision. And, sometimes like missiles flying overhead, people were doing their thing, pushing for what they needed, and it felt chaotic to me. So by the time I would come out in the evening, I was exhausted. I would come home and, sometimes I would cry in the driveway before I'd come home because I didn't want my children to see what was going on. And then
Let's pause right there because I'm hearing a lot of different pieces of you that through this journey, you said from birth to, and we're right now coming home. You're still in corporate, and we're going to pick up life after corporate.
Mhm.
There's a lot from, and these are the words that I picked up: being abandoned, isolation, not being able to bond with your mother, which obviously will carry on and did carry on through your life. Yet there's a dichotomy of having this feeling of independency.
Mm.
So you wanted to be self-reliant, yet you wanted to be seen and you wanted to be heard. You were a fixer, but yet you would shrink. So it's almost like, those of you who are listening and you know anything about Dr. Doolittle, right? The push me, pull you effect is going on internally. And I'm listening to you and I'm like feeling like on the edge of my seat, like, how did you survive for as long as you did in that state of, I'm over here, no, I'm over here, nope, I'm over here, but neither place felt authentic to you.
No, you're absolutely right. Pure chaos it was. And, I never knew who I was. The reality is I would get up in the morning, as soon as my feet would hit the floor, I was running. I didn't allow people in. They didn't see me. I wore a mask, title of the show. It was what I thought everybody needed. And so what happened was I became a chameleon. What I thought you wanted, you got. And it was exhausting until it wasn't anymore because I started having cycles of anxiety. I started having cycles of depression. And this is what happens when you have a fearful, avoidant attachment, which came from the origins of my birth. And a lot of women and a lot of men have it. They just don't know what the label is. So what I've just described is that attachment style. And yeah, chaos.
When you were describing that, many people could be watching this show and thinking, okay, at what point are we going to let go of things we couldn't control in our past? You were just a baby. Let's move on. It's not that critical yet. We know how we're being imprinted upon in different phases of our lives, right? That's the primary socialization, and to come into the world with the inability to articulate, but the feelings are there, right? They're being impressed upon the body. And then as you grow, I'm certain somehow a lot of things were suppressed within you.
Yes.
What do you want to say in this moment to individuals who think that, you know, maybe that's just your thing, but I'm okay over here, but yet everything you described they can identify with?
100%. The first thing I would say is listen to your body, because your body will language it before you do. And what I mean by that is, you know, sometimes you'll get some aches and pains. Sometimes you'll get a sense that something is not right, and your nervous system is firing and running faster than you think it should be. Your body is your first indicator. Now, you weren't born premature, or you may not have the same story that I had. But what I do know is this: at a cellular level, there are things that are running in your body that are constantly in a fight flight from your protective mechanisms. And what I mean by that is that inner child, your guardians, that thought that they needed to protect you. Now, they may not need to protect you anymore, but they've been so wired for such a long time that that is exactly what they do.
Well, so what individuals can possibly be challenged with are really they really originate back in your earliest of lived experiences.
Yes, so when a child is born, up to the age of about 3, they are in their truest personality, their true, authentic self. Now, as a child is growing, they're exposed to obviously their own family environment. They're also exposed to external environments, and we know today that a lot of children do have other caregivers other than their parents on a daily basis. And, it doesn't even have to be something bad that happens. It could be a continual look. It could be that they are a child that likes to push boundaries, so they're being told no. All these little things from the age of 3 to about 7 add up to conditionings that become traumatic to the body and to the internal systems of ourselves.
No, I've heard people and psychologists psychologists primarily or sociologists state that by the age of between 5 and 7 you are who you are. What are your thoughts about that? Does that mean, because you're saying that you were going through in this state of chaos, but you didn't know who you were. So how do you find yourself in all of this that's happening around you?
Because I had worn a mask and I was that chameleon for such a long time, I got a wake-up call. There were a couple of wake-up calls, and I'm a woman in my 50s. So women will have wake-up calls when they go through and have a childbirth or something significant in their lives. They'll also go through that when they do empty nesting or there is a divorce or a separation. And then they'll get to a particular age and, dare I say, perimenopause, premenopause, all of that. It starts putting you in a position where you just second guess absolutely everything because all your hormones are out of balance. And eventually your body wants you to look at what happened. Now, you may not remember what happened, but your body knows. And so things will start coming up. And then you get to a stage where you'll question. For me, it was 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't know who I was. I knew I was tired of being the person that I was. And what scared me the most was, who was Sonya? I was a mum, I was a wife, I was a corporate leader. I had all these labels. But if you asked me who Sonya was, there was no way in hell I could tell you, because I was always pushing and running away. I mean, when I first started realizing some of the things that had happened to me, one of them was I was crying in the shower and I didn't want to face it. And my husband asked me what was going on. And I went, I don't know if I can tell you, but I know there's a lot coming up. That was my fearfulness. I didn't want to tell him because I didn't know if he'd accept me afterwards. So yes, your personality is, pretty much defined by the time you're aged 5 to 7, but there's a lot you can do if you are willing to do the work to find out who you were before you were aged 5.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Sonya Figueiredo, and we are talking about breaking the mask, women defining power and presence. And we are listening to her origin story. And you may feel like that sounds really familiar. It kind of sounds like me. And we want to let you know you're not alone. There are resources available to help guide you to unpackage what this all is. And I'm certain some of you may feel fearful about it. You may not want to expose yourself because you'll be judged. But just imagine how delicious life can be when you are freed from these mental constraints and you're able to live fully as you. And I'm putting below here again, this show is for infotainment purposes only. We are not medical professionals. We're not here to diagnose or treat any illness or disease. We encourage you, if you're in that place of angst and you need support, please reach out to your medical professional. The information that I have below is for you if you're here in the U.S. You can call the national hotline at 988 for support. And again, remember, you are not alone. And Sonya, I just really want to say thank you as we continue with this discussion for being so transparent. And I was thinking about the mother-daughter scenario. And I have recently met several women. In fact, the numbers are actually quite staggering, who, as now women in their 50s and 60s, are admitting, I have a very challenged relationship with my mother, and it's always been so. But they don't know why. And they think, is it me? What did I do wrong? Does she not love me? Does she not accept me? Like you said, you were a people pleaser. You were looking to be accepted, to be praised by your parents. And they're feeling the same way. How can they, and how in your programs do you help people to identify that and perhaps even find the root cause of it and then get beyond that? I mean, is it really possible to get beyond that?
Thank you for asking. Firstly, I would like to say that some things are greater than what a coach can do. And, so you may need to also work hand in hand with your medical professional. But the answer is yes. Can I say to you that the relationship would be repaired with your mother? No, I can't. I can't promise that. But what I can say to you is that we can get you secure enough to accept and come from a place of acceptance of what has happened and be at a place that you give yourself love. Now, what I mean by that, can you imagine if you were in the middle of a storm and you were the calm lifeboat and there's pure chaos around you, but it didn't matter what was thrown at you, you were calm and you were centered. That's what I offer women and men, for that matter, because if you do the work on yourself and you come from a place where you are secure, then anything is possible. And sometimes loving from a distance is okay, because sometimes we can't repair those relationships, but we can certainly still love them. It's just not close to them. But when you're secure, you can have those hard conversations with your mother, because you're right, mother-daughter relationships are the most complex relationships here on earth, I believe, because a mother is trying to care for us, and gives us the tools that she had. And some of those are passed on, by the way, they're from generations of women before her. She does the best that she can. And was that the best for you? Maybe not. Was that what you needed? Possibly not. But you can sit down and have that conversation, come from a place of authenticity, talk about what you needed, and through that, there is healing in itself.
Like that. We're going to take a little break, and we're going to go to part 2 of Life After Corporate.
Hello, I'm Sonya Figueiredo, founder of Mindful Transitions. I help leaders and women ready to break free from old patterns and step into their true presence, power, and voice. Through quantum coaching, somatic practices, and mindset transformation, I guide people to release self-doubt, stop proving themselves, and reconnect with who they really are. At Mindful Transitions, we believe your next chapter isn't about being good. It's about being whole.
I like that. It's not about being good. It's about being whole. There's a couple of things that you mentioned, and just for our audience, I'd like you to define it. What is a somatic practice?
Somatic practice is, think of it like meditation, but it actually goes down to a bit more of a cellular internal level, is the best way I can explain it, where it calms the central nervous system. And that is one of the first steps that I use with my clients to help them approach life in more of a centered way.
Thank you. And you mentioned that in your practice and your coaching, you help individuals unpackage and discover who they are. And this may sound like a kind of off the wall question, but how do people know that they've actually reached the point of discovery of, yes, this is me?
It starts with the question that I believe I started with, and I see it all the time. Who am I? You wake up one morning, it may have even been constantly running unconsciously for many years, but they wake up and they are tired of repeating the same cycles over and over again. We all hear the hype about it's all mindset. If you get your mindset right, you're fine. And I'm not going to discredit that, because there is a place and it's a very powerful tool to have. However, what often happens is if you do not fix what's going on inside in your unconsciousness that you cannot label, it comes up again. You fall off. You keep doing that same cycles. You heard me talk about the cycle of, the push-pull. You heard me talk about the cycle of overspending to make myself feel better, and then feeling guilty and feeling shame, and then trying to overcompensate. That's not mindset. There is something that you need to face, whatever that may be.
Oh, what you just said is pretty profound, provocative, edgy, and controversial. because everyone is hearing it's all about mindset. Fix your mindset and do your affirmations, have your vision boards. I mean, that's what we're rallying around. but you're saying there's so much more. And when you're understanding that your body is responding in a certain way based upon certain triggers, I guess it requires you to work with individuals like yourself to do the deep dive, do the homework to understand what those possible triggers are, where the root may be. I'll give you this one example, and it's on the positive side, but I was always curious about it. And this is my father, and I asked him. I said, Dad, he lived till 94, and in my 61 years of being with him, I had never heard him say a negative word about anyone. And I said, how is that possible? Where did that come from? Again, looking at all the people in his environment and family, and just there is a lot of angry people in his upbringing. And his response to me was, he said, I don't know why. I just know. And he said, I don't even remember the memory. He said, but it was something around 3 or 4 years old that I saw. And he said, I just remember it being ugly. I didn't understand it. And I didn't want to be a part of ugly. And what I heard was this little boy say, I didn't want to be a part of ugly. So whatever that was, obviously the memory, he suppressed it, but subconsciously he made a decision that actually affected how he lived his life. So again, that's a good thing. But I just wondered, what horrible things did he see that were so traumatic to him that he's like, by hook or crook, I am not going to be a part of that equation.
Yes, and that happens to a lot of people. And it may not have necessarily even been that bad. It could have been, and I talked about it before, could have been a tone, it could have been a look. Something inside for that little boy made him feel unsafe. And our protective mechanisms, I like to call them guardians, swooped in, took him, kept him safe. He felt better. So therefore, that cycle was born. And you're right. A lot of the times, a lot of our conditioning, we talk about the people pleaser, we talk about the perfectionist, we talk about in the corporate world, people who feel like they have imposter syndrome. It doesn't always, people think that people are broken when it shows up in anger. That's not necessarily, sometimes that is just as much of being taught from our generations, what we call tribal patterns, where we're taught you cannot show your emotions. So therefore you suppress your emotions. Boys don't cry. Girls don't be too much. And then they're not taught to have healthy emotions. They're not taught that it's okay to be angry in a healthy way. They're not taught that you can cry and say, I had a bad day. And so then it comes up. And so what I do is I work with quantum healing, which is a little bit of the mindset, by the way. We do talk about seeing your future as it is and being in your future as it is. But I teach them how to get the energy field, because if you get the energy going and not just the mantras, you're teaching your body to go, this is how I'm living, because we live in the past. And what I mean by that is we show up every single day doing exactly the same thing, day in, day out. We brush our teeth the same way. We drive to work the same way. We get up the same way. So we have taught our body that this is what it is for the rest of our lives. So when you bring in the mantras and the mindset manifestation, yes, it does help, but it's about the energy, and you've got to live it and breathe it. But then you've got to go one step further and work out what is happening unconsciously. And that's where I bring in beautiful inner child work, inner parts work. With quantum and with the parts work, I sit with my clients on over several sessions. and we allow to come up what comes up, and then we work with what's coming up. We allow the guardians inside to let them know that they feel safe and they're seen. And I guide my clients through having the conversation. They are conscious of not just what they're hearing, the colors that they're seeing, what they're feeling. It's a whole body experience. And then we can also do breath work. And I don't know if you've heard about breath work, but breath work can go for up to 2 hours. And
Wow.
a lot of Indigenous people have known it before I knew it, before my family knew it. Something healing about it. I'll give you a real life experience. 4 weeks ago, I went through an hour and a half of breath work, which was guided by a colleague of mine. And I had been having issues with cortisol buildup, and it was in my hips, and it was really painful. Now, I didn't expect to have that healed or to lessen in any way, but through the things that came up for me, the things that I visited, and the things that I was able to experience, the very next day, and I kid you not, I no longer had that pain, and I don't have it even today. So these are the types of things that I work with people to allow them to be loved and allow them to accept themselves.
So let's unpackage. You mentioned the inner child, but you also had said one of the quotes you used earlier when we had a conversation. You said the body communicates as a system without language. So your sessions when you're doing the quantum work, you said you do these inner child exercises. How are you able to help people feel safe in doing that? Because if it's at a subconscious level, I don't know what I'm going to uncover. You're tapping into this child space that doesn't even have the language to communicate what's really going on.
Sure. Firstly, the body will only generally bring up something that it feels that you are now ready to handle.
Mm.
And the body won't necessarily communicate verbally. So if I was sitting talking to you, the first thing we do is we start with some breath work. And then I will ask you to tell me what you're sensing in your body. And we start from there. So recently I had a client who could feel it in her throat. And I asked her to breathe into her throat to tell me what that sensation was. She told me it was burning. And then I asked her, what did it look like? Was there any color? And she could see that it was black and it felt restricted. And it felt like, and I said, is it round? What does it look like? And she said, well, it's a hole. So can you go closer to the hole? And she said, if I go close to it, I will fall down. Now, by the way, I only tell you about people that I have permission to tell you about, just to let people be clear on that. What happened, what it turned out to be, it was an experience from when she was a child. And her father would get angry when he'd been drinking too much. And he would basically just continually for an hour or so tell her how bad she was and that she was never going to be good enough. And how dare she be the person to try and speak up and tell him that that's not true. So what was happening in her corporate life was that every time she needed to speak up, there was a blockage there. And that came from a memory. So it was manifesting as a voice because she was told that she didn't have a voice. And so working through what we call quantum collapse, we collapsed it and we anchored it with a positive experience. And right now she's doing really well.
Thank you for that, because that gives me context, and I think our listening audience. We're here with Sonya Figueiredo, and we're talking about breaking the mask, women defining power and presence, and how our lived experience from sometimes the time of our birth can have impressions upon our body, shape us in a subconscious manner, and it dictates how we show up in life. And we're confused as to why am I always this way? But you, Sonya, with your coaching program, with your quantum techniques, inner child work, breath work, neurolinguistic programming, help individuals to navigate this space of discovery, if you will, right? In a safe way.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I like to see myself as walking alongside a person rather than leading a person, because it's not about me. It's about allowing the person that I'm working with to feel safe enough to allow whatever come up, to look at it, and then to arrive at their own conclusions on how best they go forward. Because I am not their parent. I am not the person that brought them to that place in the first place. It's about me giving them the safe space for them to do that.
So let's go back a little bit. So you gave us the beginning of your story. You took us through your childhood, your home life, your marriage, and we stopped at corporate. So let's talk to the corporate. I want this conversation to focus on women right now, because I think we are more challenged with feeling free and expressing ourselves, and I think that's cross cultures. What was your experience in corporate? As you said, you wore the mask. You walked in that male energy when you had to, based upon your corporate setting, but it didn't feel right. You didn't feel authentic. How did you go from that state of corporate empowerment, if you will, because you were doing well, but it wasn't you, to where you are now in being free and being authentic? How did you make that leap?
Thank you. Well, firstly, I want to say for women in corporate, we talk about I think it's 14% of women are in Fortune 500 companies. What women do, though, is, and we talk about breaking the glass ceiling, and we can't break that glass ceiling. As women, we have our own glass ceiling. As women, we don't believe in ourselves as much as we should do. And, when we go to apply ourselves, if we don't do 100%, then we've discredited ourselves already. And I'm telling you now that is not the case. 70% is good enough, and you need to believe in yourself. And how you do that is a journey in itself. And let me tell you about my journey. I proved myself over and over again until I was tired, until I was hiding in my office, crying because I couldn't take it anymore, because someone said something that didn't feel safe to me, even when the words were okay. I had pushed myself to the brink, proving over and over again. And what happened, and where I am now, is I ended up in hospital, as a lot of us do, because our body cannot take it anymore. I went to bed one night feeling a little bit off throughout the day, and I woke up in the middle of the night, 11 o'clock at night, and felt like I was having a heart attack. I woke up and I told my husband, I'm having a heart attack. And he said, don't be silly. Have a glass of water. You've just got indigestion. We had rich food that night. I got up. I went to walk to the bathroom to get some water, and I fell on the floor. We got into the car. Don't do what I do. Call an ambulance. Got to the hospital, and my heart was beating at 170 beats per minute. It turned out to be called atrial fibrillation, which is when your heart misfires and beats out of rhythm. It was like that for 3 days. On the third day, they said to me if they couldn't bring it back into rhythm, they were going to have to shock my heart, basically stop it to start it again. That scared the hell out of me, because all I could think about is what would happen to my grown kids, what would happen to my husband. But you know what scared me the most was, what was my legacy? Sure, I'd been in corporate world. Sure, I had the house. I had everything that looked great on paper. But what I didn't have was teaching my children, or myself for that matter, what it was like to live, to be seen as truly me. So I got out of hospital and I looked for a better way. And I knew that I had to start working on myself, and I had to go deep and find out what was stopping me.
Wow. When you were saying the atrial fibrillation, I had a coworker, and we found out he actually ended up dying in my arms, and that was the cause of death. And we were at an office event, and he was always the prankster, and he was out. He was out, and he's like, "Oh, LaWanna, dance with me," and he spun me around, and then he fell on the floor, and we just thought, "Okay, Jorge, come on, get up. It's not funny." And he died.
Wow.
And when you were talking about this, it's like our bodies give us these indicators, right? It's just like a car in the dashboard, and you see things, and we push through them. I know for me, my upbringing was okay, and I'm a former athlete, right? So it's push through the pain. Mm-hmm. And then you take that same conditioning, on the field, and you apply it to everything in life. I can push through. It's okay. And then it shows up in all these chronic conditions that people are experiencing. And it's very, very frightening. And like you said, your wake-up call, I think we all want our lives to matter at the end of the day. But how much of an impact can they have when we're basically hiding under a rock or wearing a mask because we're afraid to be seen and heard?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that, you can't be successful living the life I've lived and living the life a lot of women live, hiding, because you certainly can, but your body really does catch up with you eventually. And it will catch up to you when you're least wanting it to catch up to you. I was lucky. I haven't had I had 3 incidences within the space of a month, because anxiety also settled in, and it just kept going. So when I started doing the deep work, I haven't had one since. And the scary thing, LaWanna, is that atrial fibrillation is happening younger more often. So atrial fibrillation is quite common from the age of about 75 onwards. But it is actually happening as early as 30 years of age. And that's because of the stressful lives that we live in. And people don't know how to rest. And in a busy life now, what we're finding is that the conditionings and the trauma that I talked about, we push it down more and more. We're isolated, we're lonely. 54% in America of people feel isolated, feel lonely. And that percentage is even higher for women. And that percentage gets higher when women are in the corporate world. And so what does our body do? It forces us to listen.
Yes. Wow. This has been amazing. I can't believe we're almost out of time, Sonya. I could unpackage more and more. I'm looking at her as you were talking. I'm taking all these notes. I'm like, I've got to have her back. I need more. But I'm going to allow you time to speak to our audience and share with them what you feel can help maybe transform, give some support, some tips, some tools to help them live a full and healthy life. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, if you've been listening to my story and something has come up for you, your body's not feeling quite right, maybe you've had moments where your breath has been a little bit faster than it should be, maybe, just maybe, your body is speaking to you. Now, I can't promise you that the work that I do is easy, but I can promise you the work that I do is rewarding, because you've arrived in this spot right now through conditions that were never yours. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're beautiful. You've adapted. You have done everything that you could do to keep yourself safe and be in this place at the moment. But I also know that you do not have to continue to do the things that you do now. Now, some of that is by understanding what attachment you have been given. Maybe you're anxious, maybe you're avoidant, maybe you're dismissive, maybe you're a bit of both. The beautiful thing is working out what attachment you have, doing the work, and becoming secure in yourself. When you do that, you break the cycles. Can you imagine coming home from a hard day at work, your children come and run up to you to say hello, and you find the time and the energy to give them the hug and be present, and I mean fully present. You don't think about the day, you don't think about the dinner ready to be cooked. You just spend that time with them. And can you imagine sitting across the table from your partner, having a hard conversation that you know you need to have, and you don't feel like you need to run, avoid, and your body is not tense? Or you have a little bit of an argument and you don't think afterwards, what was that all about? I don't know why I did that. Because this is all that is available to you when you work with you. And the first thing to do is to pay attention to your patterns. When you're feeling a little uncomfortable and something is not feeling right, get curious. Journal it. Sit there and think about it. Speak it out loud. Say what is happening to you. If you're in a conversation with somebody and you're not feeling safe, tell them. Tell them it's not them. This is just how you feel. And it allows your nervous system to calm down. And then you can come from a place where you can start again. And if you feel that there are things that are coming up for you and you are ready, give me a shout out. I'm actually offering 10 places for women at this moment on a new program that goes deep to your inner self, to help you break through those cycles, to help you be present, whole, and full of energy. and it will be at a reduced rate for you today. I also have a book coming up called The Good Girl Be Gone, where the stories you've heard now, I go deeper, and I also offer little coping mechanisms as we go along. But mostly, the message for you today is, wherever you are beautiful because you have been adaptive and you got this far. Just imagine what life would be like if you became whole again, and whatever was thrown at you, you were in a position of calm and clarity, and you could go about your day consciously instead of unconsciously. It's all waiting for you. All you have to do is say yes. And if anything I said spoke to you, give me a shout out. Let's have a conversation. The conversation is where it starts. Thank you.
This has been amazing, Sonya. Thank you so very much for joining us. So enriching, so enlightening. Has me even asking some questions about some things that I've gone through in the past. And it's all about a journey of discovery, right? And we're always growing, we're always improving. And I love what Sidney Poitier, the actor, once said. He said, every day his goal was to be better than the day before. And the only way we can do that is to challenge who we were, right? To challenge that old paradigm, that old model, and to show up differently, even if it's little baby steps. But I think we can make those massive strides and changes when we're with individuals such as yourself, coaches who can help guide us in understanding what this is and how to navigate it in a safe way to reveal the truth of who we are and our brilliance. And as you told our listening audience, we're beautiful, we're wondrously made, and it's time for us to believe that and live it. Yes.
100%. And you can be the ripple effect that you want for yourself, for your family, and for the people that are around you.
Yes. Well, thank you so very much, Sonya, for joining us. Definitely want to have you back on our platform. And to our listening audience, thank you for joining us for another edition of Choose to Challenge. And just remember, in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. Be safe, be well. Until next time. Bye for now.